If you know how to crochet, the crochet cast on is going to be the easiest way for you to turn from crocheting into knitting. It's going to be, I think, one of the easiest cast ons that you can do as a crocheter who's learning how to knit. I started my journey as a crocheter. I was self-taught in crochet, I was self-taught in knitting, and this type of cast on is going to be the easiest for you to do. So let me teach you how to do it. I'm using worsted weight yarn, 5mm knitting needles, and a 5mm crochet hook. I'll just grab one of my knitting needles for now, and to note that these are double pointed needles, but you don't need them for this project. You'll only need single pointed needles, but these are nice because they don't hit my desk every time that I use them in a video. So let's put one of those knitting needles aside, and we'll set the other one down in front of us and grab our tail of yarn. This cast on starts with a slip knot. The way that I do that is I make 2 loops around my finger, I bring the back loop forward, and then I bring the now back loop off of my finger to create that knot. And I'm going to put that on my crochet hook as if I'm going to start a chain. And essentially I'm just going to be making a chain with my crochet hook, but we're going to be doing it around the knitting needle. So I'm going to hold the knitting needle in this hand with my crochet hook, and I'll have the yarn wrapped behind the knitting needle because we want these loops to go over the knitting needle. I'll just hold as if I'm going to chain, right? But I have the knitting needle in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to yarn over and pull a loop through the slip knot that was on my knitting needle. Now I need to move the working yarn behind the knitting needle again before I can pull through another loop. So what I'm going to do is just maneuver that behind, and I'll pull through another loop. And again, I'm going to move that working yarn behind my knitting needle. I'm going to pull up a loop and pull it through the loop on my crochet hook. And you can see that we are getting our cast on. This is just like chaining, right? We can chain all we want with our crochet hook, but what we're doing essentially is taking these bumps that we get from our chain, and we're just making those bumps go around our knitting needle. I'm going to go ahead and put about 16 stitches onto our knitting needle. It's just a very simple process here of constantly looping the yarn around your knitting needle and then pulling a loop through. So I have 15 stitches on the needle now, and I do still have 1 loop remaining on my crochet hook. So all I'm going to do is slip that stitch from my crochet hook onto my knitting needle and remove my crochet hook. And then we can just pull that yarn tight, and now we have a cast on edge. So once I've got that cast on complete, I can bring my other knitting needle in, and here's where it gets fun. We're going to learn how to do the knit stitch first. Just like I hold the tension in my yarn for when I'm crocheting, imagine if this were my crochet hook, I'm going to hold the tension the same way when I'm knitting. This is great for learning. If you know how to crochet, you'll be a great continental knitter. I don't like to throw my yarn, I like to pull through my yarn. So what I'm going to do with my knitting needle is I'm going to stick it knitwise, which means from left to right in the front of my stitch here. I'm going to insert it like so into the first stitch. What I need to do on the other end is I need to loop my yarn, make a loop around my knitting needle, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to maneuver this yarn through the loop here. And I do that by angling my knitting needle close to me, and I like to hold on to the yarn here, and you just bring it through your loop, and then you throw the loop off that you just went through. Now we insert knitwise, which means we go from the left hand of the stitch through to the right hand of the stitch, from left to right, make a loop in the back, hold on to that loop, and pull it through your stitch, and then remove that stitch from the needle. A fun way to remember this is stab it, strangle it, pull its guts out, throw it off the cliff. So we're just going to keep doing that. Now, if you were not holding your yarn with this hand, you could stick your needle through, loop this way, and then pull up. So there are some folks who prefer to loop their yarn like so. I just prefer to hold it in my left hand because I'm used to holding the tension that way. So I'm just going to knit the remainder of these stitches here all the way to the end. Remember, from left through to the right and then pulling up a stitch. And then we do the last one like so. You could continue in this way if you don't want to learn how to do the purl stitch, but next I will show you how to purl. So we just finished our row of knitting, and now if we flip this work over, we'll get to our purl side. Now, when we were knitting, we stuck our knitting needle from the left through to the right, but what we're going to do instead is stick our needle from the right through to the left. So knit, purl. What we also need to do is we're going to hold our yarn in front of our work. So this first stitch can be kind of hard if you're holding too much tension, so sometimes I just let the yarn hang there. And I'll insert my knitting needle from right to left, and then you want to take your yarn, wrap it around your needle, and scoop it through. So you want to bring it right back out to where you started. And again, we want to throw off that stitch we just did. So you're going to stick your knitting needle in from right to left, loop your yarn around your needle, and then we're pulling this yarn using our knitting needle through that stitch and then throwing that stitch off the cliff. So what it looks like if you were to use your free hand here, your left hand, insert your knitting needle from right to left, wrap your yarn around, and I like to use my middle finger to ensure that I have enough loop on here to easily just bring my needle back the way that it came. So stick your needle into the loop, loop your yarn around. I'm going to use my middle finger here to push down on that yarn so it loops around, and then just bring the needle back out the way that it came. And that is a purl stitch. And faster, it looks something like this. And then you'll just pull your stitches along with you as you're going. So from right to left, loop your yarn, and then bring your needle back through the way that it came, and then pop that stitch off. Back the way it came, just like so. Same with the last stitch. And we can turn our work and go back to the knit stitch. So remember, when we're doing the knit stitch, we're going from left to right. So we're sticking our needle in this way, looping our yarn, and pulling our needle back through that same loop. So we stick it in this way and back through. And you're always wanting to catch the loop that's in front of your knitting needle here. Loop it through and scoop. Loop and scoop. I find this method to be the best for me. But you could find a different method to be easier, and that's a-okay. You can just continue in these knits and purls, and eventually you will have a swatch. And the way that we can tell what side is the right side and what side is the wrong side is that the smooth side is the right side, and the bumpy side is the quote-unquote wrong side. The purl side. The knit side, the purl side.